In earlier videos, I've mentioned that Gears Tactics is more story-driven than most games in this genre, and that's definitely true. It might be a tactics game, but it's also a Gears game through and through, with all the chainsaw revving, locust crushing grid fans love. And beneath the top-down gameplay lies an intriguing story, one that expands the Gears universe and gives us a new perspective on the brutal fight for survival against the Locust Horde. The game is packed with dialogue and cutscenes, and instead of the campaign being mostly randomly generated, here it features a bunch of fully pre-designed story missions. These missions are set in distinct, carefully crafted locations, bringing more depth and life to the story. This approach does wonders for world building and storytelling, but it does hurt replayability a bit, since those missions will play out almost exactly the same in future playthroughs. What really surprised me was that the story didn't feel like some random throwaway filler you might expect from a spin-off. I know I expected just that, a story with no real significance outside of its own game. But Gears Tactics feels like a lot more than that.
We're in for a fun ride, you and me.
Now, as I mentioned before, I haven't played any of the other Gears games, but after doing some research and falling down a bit of a wiki rabbit hole, I'm pretty sure this story is important in the grand scheme of things. Most of the characters in the plot are either connected to major events in the lore or directly related to other key characters in the main series.
Reyna.
It's not vital for understanding the entire Gears universe, but it does enhance and expand the lore in a meaningful way. Gears Tactics is a prequel, set during the very early days of humanity's war with the Locust, roughly 12 years before the main series kicks off. The world of Serra is in chaos, with the Locust Horde emerging from underground and wreaking havoc across the planet. The Coalition of Ordered Governments, or COG, is struggling to respond, and humanity's future is hanging by a thread. The story follows Gabriel Diaz, a former lieutenant colonel who became disillusioned with the COG's brutal methods during the previous war and requested a demotion, landing him in the engineering corps.
Lieutenant Colonel Diaz, it's been too long.
It's Sergeant now, Chairman.
After the devastating Hammer of Dawn strikes, Gabe is dragged back to the front lines, as Chairman Prescott personally orders him to hunt down and kill a Locust scientist named Ukon. Ukon is no ordinary Locust. He's a terrifying figure who created some of the deadliest monsters in the Locust arsenal. Things like Corpser and Brumak.
A monster who makes monsters.
Diaz is given no resources, no squad and no equipment, just a gruff partner, Major Sid Redburn.
Hold up, if this grub's as dangerous as you say, I need equipment, soldiers, an army.
Oh, you always were resourceful. Recruit whatever gears you find and figure out the rest.
Gabe is forced back into combat, a duty he's reluctant to resume, but can't avoid. His character arc is compelling, revealing a soldier torn between duty and his own ethical doubts.
No. I told Prescott, I don't do that shit anymore.
Together, Gabe and Sid scrape a squad of stranded COG soldiers. Along the way, they also save a convoy of civilians led by Michaela Dorn. Initially, the civilians resent the Gears, viewing them as nothing more than
fascists.
but after some time and some grudging teamwork, they join forces and even begin training civilians to fight back against the Locust. With the team assembled, the squad finally goes after Ukon, managing to locate and attack him, only to find out that he can regenerate, making him practically unkillable.
Useless human filth.
This covers the first few hours of the game, which are very story heavy. Nearly every mission in this section is important. Characters are introduced, events unfold, and the plot keeps moving forward at a brisk pace. But then it slows down, like really slows down. For a solid stretch in the mid-game, you'll find yourself in a loop of side missions that don't do much for the story. You'll be stealing supplies, blowing up random objectives, or rescuing operatives over and over again. Occasionally, you'll hit a proper story mission that progresses the plot, but for the most part, you're just going through the motions. Once you finish the story, you unlock Veteran mode. This is essentially an endless mode where you can keep playing for the sake of the gameplay itself. There's no more story, no cutscenes, no character progression, just missions and loot. It even adds a new loot tier above Legendary, and the goal of the mode is to find all 20 of these supreme items. It's a nice addition for players who really enjoy the combat and want to stick around. But for me, it just didn't have the same appeal. Without the story and stakes, it felt a little hollow. By the end, Gears Tactics left me with mixed feelings. I enjoyed the story and the character interactions. There are interesting twists, solid character development, and strong world building. You get to learn more about the origins of the Locust Horde, the shady dealings of the COG, and how everything ties together. For someone who's new to the Gears lore, it was really fascinating to discover. That said, I can't ignore the pacing issues. It feels like the game starts strong, but then grinds to a halt for a good chunk of the middle. And this isn't a particularly long game. It clocks in at around 25 hours for most playthroughs. Half of that time is spent on repetitive, samey missions. Without base building or research to break things up, the only progression comes from the story. And when the story slows down, the whole game feels slow. Thank you for watching the final slice of this series. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. Next week I'll be releasing the full video, where I'll not only wrap up my review of Gears Tactics, but also go on a bit of a rant about the state of the Gears of War franchise. Who knows, maybe these familiar mechanics will get a fresh twist. Playing them is such a pain in the ass. Nope, that version is a broken disaster. I honestly don't even know anymore. The way Gears of War has been handled on PC just feels disrespectful. There's also Gears of War E-Day coming out soon. At the end of the day, the biggest issue with Gears Tactics. Plus, I'll share some of my plans for future content. So stay tuned, and I look forward to hearing from you next week.